Hello and welcome to the final part of the Evolution Miniatures diorama tutorial. The lighting circuit turned up from my friend Warren Monks. It looks fantastic, as you can see. This is just a quick mock-up, just bringing every element together, just making sure everything is as it should be. Now I wanted to blend the pipe in a little bit, so I decided to use some ivy. Now I tried the paper ivy. I wasn't really convinced by that. It looked a little overscale to me, and I think the brass items have a lot more finesse. They're a lot finer. That being said, they're a lot harder work to keep in place. So first of all, they were primed with Tamiya primer and then sprayed a number of different colours. They were then bent to the shape of the pipe, and various strands were added as the build went on. I had to go back at the end of the build and just make sure that any bits of exposed brass where the paint had kind of cracked a little bit, where it had been bent into place, had to be covered up, because that would just look really unrealistic. They were blue tacked in place first of all to get a realistic finish, and then at the end of the build they were super glued in place. Now, for the purposes of this video, I thought I'd do another concrete pipe just to show the process that I went through. So again, it's just literally using a kitchen roll insert, cutting it to shape, making sure obviously the end's nice and square, because that's going to be blocked off and that's where the bulb's going to be mounted. A pair of sprue cutters was then used to add some chips and just general wear and tear to the edge of the pipe. The cutters gave a nice angular sort of appearance to it that the scalpel maybe wouldn't achieve. I was trying to be as random as possible here, just to break up the sort of silhouette of the mouth of the pipe. So see, once this had done, it's quite a few areas of interest added. Next up, a piece of plastic, circular plastic, was cut to shape. This is where the bulb will be mounted in the back of the tube, and it will just give the tube some extra rigidity. So once I was happy with this, I used some steel tow cable wire, sort of 1/35 tow cable wire, and cut that into shape for the rebar, the supporting steel that would be inside the pipe. Don't use your sprue cutters for this. I've made that mistake and ruined them pretty much. So a specialist pair of wire cutters are needed. So various sections were kind of cut to size. Some were just random pieces of rebar sticking out. This one obviously is on the edge of the pipe, so I wanted to make sure that was the correct size. So once bent to shape and then super glued in place, you've got a realistic appearance. It almost adds another level of detail to the piece, and I just think really adds a nice finishing touch. So here we see the finished pipe. There's a little hole cut in the side for the light to shine through as well, and it's ready for the texture paint. So next up, the AK Interactive texture concrete paint was added over the pipe, and it's worth giving it a really good stir, because it really agitates the texture in the paint, so you get a really nice grainy finish. So some areas receive several coats, such as the bottom of the pipe where debris would build up on the inside, where other parts received very little, just to get a really nice contrast. So with the pipe pretty much finished, or at least the first early stages, the texture paint was left to dry overnight. And then when I came back the next day, I did a very generous coating of MIG Starship Filth oil brusher wash, pretty much all over the pipe, and went back and added some subsequent quotes later on. So here you see the base coat of the pipe all done. Next up, some oil brusher rust was added straight onto the rebars or the steel supports, just to get a really nice concentrated look to the rust effects. This was then blended in with turpentine and allowed me to add some rust streaks just to the edges of the aperture of the pipe. So with that done, a very generous coating of MIG oil brusher moss green was added, and the emphasis was more towards the bottom of the pipe, just to show where the moisture had kind of been trapped a little bit by the ivy, just coming up from the ground. So an overall wash was applied at the bottom of the pipe, and then I decided to go back, as you see here, and add some specific pin washes just to really build up the effect. So this was dabbed on areas, again concentrating towards the bottom of the pipe, and as you can see, the whole thing was blended in using turpentine again to produce a really nice weathered effect. So here's the finished article, and this is the last thing to be tackled for the diorama. It's a really good fun project, and hopefully you can see here from the video, the lighting circuit really adds a very nice extra layer of interest. Now I think overall I was really happy how this came out. I'm trying to think why I was so happy with it. I think because I was very focused on the idea. I had a vision in my mind how I wanted it to look, and I think dioramas where I've kind of changed my ideas halfway through don't quite have that focus. So I think it's always worth having a very clear idea of what you want to do before you get started. So here are just some still images of the diorama. I did some rats from main models as a final area of interest just around the bottom of the pipe. I hope you've enjoyed this series of videos. I've enjoyed making them. It's certainly been something quite different. As you can see, I've added a circuit diagram if you want to try doing the light circuit yourself. So I hope to see you again next week. Thanks again for watching, and take care. Bye bye.